Hello everyone. I've been asked to share about Dadi Janki. What can I say? I was very close to her over the years, especially because I was one of the first foreigners to come into contact with Brahma Kumaris, and in fact it was through her glance, or through what we call her drishti, just she looked at me with such love that I had my spiritual birth. And this happened in London in 1975. When I came along, I didn't know I was one of the first, in a very tiny centre in northwest London. And when I was coming along, she wasn't there. She was away for a couple of weeks, and then she came back. And one day I came into the centre. I was going up the stairs. She was coming down the stairs. And she just looked at me with such deep love and purity that I was transformed. And she said, even though I didn't know what it meant, she said, "You will do Baba's service in the whole world." I didn't know who Baba was. I didn't know what service was. And I had no intention of going through the whole world, obviously. But she had that vision, she had that impulse. And in fact, after that, I just melted. Very soon after that, I went to Mount Abu, and I got some further instructions. I went back to Australia. The centre there had started, but it was closing down for a while. So I took it up and I started a small centre. And from there, actually, everything in Australia began, you could say, in terms of Brahma Kumaris, and that from that small centre. There was that interruption of a few months, and then I restarted everything without much experience. But Dadi Janki was always the inspiration for everything that I did. And there are, a few times I had doubts about my role, because generally a sister would be doing what I'm doing, and I asked Daddy, how come I'm in the role that I am? And she would say, it's because you have mercy. And what's the most important effort I have to do, Daddy? And she would say, you just have to remain pure and unaffected by the things. She would say, put the local people in front. This is when I went to Brazil, because I was sent to Brazil from Mount Abu in 1979. And from there, all of the service, all of the work started in Latin America. And she was the one who was guiding every step. So Daddy would say, put the local people in front as soon as you can. She would say, just keep yourself free, don't get too much involved, keep traveling around. And in that way, actually, I would start different groups of interested people in meditation. And then I would just visit them and sustain them. Little by little, the service expanded within Brazil, and then we spread out to other countries in the region. And Daddy was with us every single step. She was like guiding everything, and she was so accurate. I once went to her, Daddy, I went to her to complain about someone, and of course it was someone that I'd requested to stay in the front of one of the centres. And Daddy just looked at me, she said, stop complaining, you're defaming yourself. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if you put that person there, you are part of that creation, aren't you? So if you're defaming your creation, then you're defaming yourself. And I said, oh yeah, you're right. So after that, I never had the courage to complain about someone anymore to her, because she had such a high vision of everyone. And she would say that, she's concerned about us, that in her meditation she would be sending out sakash, she would be sending out a current of spiritual power. Because there wasn't any way, those days there was no email, there was no WhatsApp, there was nothing like that. International telephone calls were extremely expensive. And, we would think twice about making them. So everything had to happen on a subtle level, which is very different from today, So at a subtle level, yes, we did feel that Daddy was sustaining us. That she, in her meditation, was spreading out those rays, received from God, but spreading out from her to help sustain the different places for which she was actually ultimately responsible. She had to be accountable to Baba for, you'd say. In the beginning, of course, it was Daddy Prakash Mani who was responsible for the activities, even outside of India. And Daddy herself had visa problems. She didn't come out of London for a couple of years. But then she took on this role of being responsible for the activities outside of India. And she was absolutely brilliant at that role. And she created so many friends. At the end of the 90s, she at her inspiration, we did a program called Call of the Time, which was basically to gather together small groups of leaders, people who had some influence in society, but were also on some sort of a spiritual path. So they had something to offer and were concerned about the way the world is. And we started having different dialogues throughout the world, different dialogues. And I was fortunate enough to participate in a few of them. There was one in Brazil in, I think around 2005, I think. It was organized by one of the federations of industry, one of those group of industrial concerns that would get together, and the president of that organization was very friendly with the Brahma Kumaris, and so he organized a dialogue for very high-level leaders of Brazilians. And I remember that we went to this venue near the city of Curitiba, which is south of Brazil, and Daddy's plane was late, and she had to make a connection in Sao Paulo, which is the main city for flights coming from outside of Brazil. And she came from India, so you can imagine it's like 12 hours, 8-10 hours to London, and another 12 hours to Brazil, plus the waiting in London. So she came directly. And even then, the plane got late, and it was delayed in Sao Paulo before she got the connection. So we were imagining that she would arrive completely exhausted. So we arranged for that. The event had already started, and we were all sitting around in the room just chatting away, and we were allowing for the fact that Daddy would arrive, and then probably she would rest, and then we would see her in the afternoon. But nothing doing. Daddy arrived. Imagine, she arrived from India via London, then via Sao Paulo, huge trip. And she was at that time, 90 something? And we thought, okay, we should give her some time off. But to our surprise, when Daddy arrived, knowing that everyone was sitting around just actually waiting for her to come, she came straight from the car into the meeting and just melted everyone's heart. That she gave so much attention to everyone and so much appreciation for the fact that they had made the effort to get there, and completely unconcerned about her own tiredness, her own state of the body, even the state of the mind. She was just a giver, a bestower, complete bestower. And I'd seen that time and time again. In spite of her weak body, she had many health problems. She would never give up an opportunity to be with people, to talk with people. If you went in the car with Daddy, it wasn't that she would be resting in the side of the car, but she would be giving some instruction. She'll be giving something from God to us. She would be giving some sort of knowledge to us. And it was absolutely amazing how she was able to do that. And so Daddy, for me, was someone who was absolutely tireless. And she cultivated this group of friends to the extent that I remember when she had her 90th birthday, people wanted to celebrate it. And we were in England, in our retreat centre at Oxford. And of course, everyone, 90 years old, Daddy is 90 years old, let's have a celebration. Of course, Daddy really didn't want a celebration. She was a very simple person, very simple in every aspect. Even the places where she stayed, her room was such a royal and clean and simple place, elegant, nothing, no luxury at all. And she wanted to, okay, I will participate in this birthday celebration, but I actually want to make an event out of it. So she decided that it should be a dialogue, and the name of the dialogue was Serving from the Heart. Serving from the Heart. So instead of just getting people around, and friends, those friends, especially those from the Call of the Time, came to that, and they obviously were very happy that she was there. I think there must have been about 90 or 100 people from all over the world at this event. And Daddy just gave so much love. And the idea was everyone would be sharing in small groups, and then they would come up with a question for her. And she loved that, that interaction, question and answer sort of style. And I remember someone at my table got up and asked Daddy, if someone betrays me, how can I serve that person from the heart? And Daddy said very clearly, to be betrayed by someone, you need to have betrayed yourself first. And so it was beautiful to see how she was able to change around. Someone was suffering, but how she could take the thorn out of the person just by saying something so simple. And of course, when that person came back to our interaction in the group, she said, yeah, she's right, Nobody told me. She said, the person used this example, this woman used this example. Yeah, if I bet on a horse and my horse doesn't win, what do I do with the betting ticket? So she was having expectations of someone. Nobody told her to have expectations, so she understood that, yes, she had betrayed herself first and then allowed that to happen. So the thorn was removed. And it was beautiful to see how Daddy, just by her simple instructions, simple knowledge, was able to make people remove any suffering that they were having. So I see Daddy as a tireless server, in spite of the state of her body, in spite of everything around her, someone who could be a remover of sorrow and a giver of happiness all the time. Whenever she came into a room, the room lit up as if the sun had come. So I see Daddy as that spiritual son. Of course, the child of the one who is the son for everyone, God. But she would get that light and shine it out so accurately. So thank Daddy for such a beautiful example for all of us. Thank you. Om Shanti.